Hello and welcome to week 3. This week, we are going to be focusing on conflict management and assertive communication. So, for this week, you will read the assertiveness workbook, chapters 2 and 3, and then also read an article on the different. It's called A Practical Approach to Conflict Management, and it's going to introduce us to the 5 conflict management styles from Thomas Kilmann. So, there's also a short video to watch that covers the Thomas and Kilman conflict management styles. So, our objectives this week are to understand the importance of assertive communication, evaluate the effectiveness of different communication styles, and then evaluate the effectiveness of different conflict management strategies. So, I'm going to start with conflict management strategies, and then we'll go into assertive communication. So, first, the article that you read was specific to residencies for medical students. And so that's not the specific group that you all are, but it does, I think it helps us understand different conflict management styles in a healthcare setting because there's a lot of research done about the conflict management styles, but I like this one because it does focus in on the healthcare setting. And they talk about how critical conflict management is in healthcare. And so this article outlines the 5 conflict management styles that come from the Thomas and Kilman Conflict Mode Instrument, or TKI. And you'll be taking an assessment yourself to figure out what your conflict management style is. But it's really important to recognize that these conflict management styles, it's not just there's one that we should be using and then all the rest are bad. It particularly in healthcare, there's a lot of nuance in terms of knowing and understanding when to use the appropriate style. So I'll go through the 5 styles and talk about maybe some of the times that you would use those styles in healthcare. So first is there on the Thomas and Kilman strategy or conflict management strategies, there's 2 components. There's assertiveness and cooperativeness. So what that means is some styles require a lot of assertiveness, which means voicing your opinion, stating your needs and wants, advocating for yourself versus, unassertive would be very passive and it would be um, really not saying what you want, giving in to other people's demands, kind of doing anything that you're asked for, accommodating to other people. And then the other axis that we're looking at is how cooperative are you? So there's high cooperativeness, which means you work really well with other people and you're trying to find the best solution possible, or low cooperativeness, where you're really just out to protect yourself and get what you want. And so an ideal situation is high assertiveness and high cooperativeness, which is the collaborative style. But as I mentioned, there are times in healthcare in particular where another style is going to be necessary. So the first style is competing or competition. And this is a win lose approach. So it's very high on assertiveness, but very low on cooperativeness. So this is, I want, um, I think this is the best decision. And I am not interested in getting feedback or talking to anyone else or, compromising. It's my way or the highway. That's a competing style. And in healthcare, there are times when you need a really decisive leader that is just telling everyone else what to do, is not looking for feedback, doesn't really have time to be cooperative. They just need to make a very quick decision and have everyone listen and fall in line. And so I imagine you can think of times in an emergency situation where that's going to be required, where we don't have time to kind of get together and problem solve and bring in everybody's opinion. So a competing style is necessary at times in the healthcare setting. The next is collaborating, which is high assertiveness and high cooperativeness. And that is the idea that it's a team approach. You're really working with everyone to try to find the best solution. And again, this is an extremely important in healthcare that we are collaborative if we have the time to do that. And a lot of times we do, right? It's not every situation in healthcare is really urgent. So you can imagine, a nursing floor in the hospital, recognizing that there's an issue that we need to address, and taking a time at a team meeting to really get everybody's input, come up with a solution, and move forward. Obviously, we can't do that if the patient is coding, but during a calm time, during a unit meeting, would be a great time to have this collaborative approach. Avoiding is low assertiveness and low cooperativeness, because this is really just, I don't want to be involved in conflict at all, so I avoid it. I walk away. I don't engage. I kind of just try to pretend like it's not there. I kind of suppress my feelings. I don't state what they are. I don't state my ideas. This is very unhelpful, and it really is harmful to the person too, in terms of their own um, mental health and their own like feelings about work. They often have high burnout or low morale because they're not sharing their thoughts and ideas. They're not being able to voice their concerns, and they're suppressing that. Those emotions often will explode out of us at some time after we've avoided conflict for so long. So it's not helpful in healthcare or really most situations. The one time or sometimes when we might use avoiding is in a situation where we don't have a relationship with these people. We might never see them again. I'm thinking I'm at a restaurant and I don't like the item that I ordered, but I don't want to draw a big scene. I'm not going to say anything. I just probably won't come back here again. I'm just going to let it slide, not eat my food or eat my food and leave. Right. Because I don't have a long lasting relationship with this person. And I don't want to invest time and energy into making a complaint or going through that process. So there are times when we might avoid a conflict. In healthcare, maybe a patient says something to you that's rude or disrespectful, but you don't want to, this patient's only going to be here for a little bit. They're going to be discharged. You want to keep the patient happy and not upset and not, um, you don't want to disturb the patient or their family. And so maybe you don't address it. But if a colleague who you're going to continue to work with said something similar, then maybe you do address it, because avoiding that would harm the working relationship. Um, so then the next one is accommodating. This is similar to avoiding, except that you're not completely avoiding the conflict, you're giving in. So avoiding would be somebody comes up and says, "Hey, I need you to take on another patient on this floor because I'm too busy over here." And avoiding might be walking away and not doing anything. Accommodating would be like, "Oh, sure, I can do that," even though you've got way too much on your plate and you can't really do that. But you're accommodating to what that person had asked. Whereas a more collaborative or compromising approach might be, "I can't get to that right now because I have to do a bath. I can do that when I'm done with my tasks." Or maybe if you take the bath, then I can do that. That would be a collaborative solution. But accommodating is just saying yes, taking on all the tasks, even though it's not good for you. Um, and so that also can be problematic in healthcare. Sometimes nurses and other healthcare providers accommodate too much to the point where there's a lot of resentment and burnout. And then lastly is compromising, which is similar to collaborating, except in a collaborating approach, everyone has to give a little, but they also get something. Whereas a collaboration, in a collaborative approach, the idea is that everybody wins. So um, the you find a solution that works for everyone, whereas a compromise is we find a solution that works, but we all had to give up a little bit of something. Sometimes compromise is the best we can do. The ideal situation, most of the time when time allows, is collaborative. So those are the Thomas Kilman conflict management strategies. And then the other thing you read for this week is the assertiveness workbook, and it talks about the different assertive or the different communication styles. There's passive, passive aggressive, aggressive, and assertive. And then they also talk about the alternator, which is basically just moving between two communication styles. So typically what happens with the alternator is I'm passive, 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 passive all the time. I kind of being walked all over, taken advantage of, and then I explode because I'm so upset after all this time of kind of being used and taken advantage of, and I explode into an aggressive approach. We're going to go over these assertive or the communication styles a lot in class. We're going to be focusing on how can we become more assertive. And so I'm not going to go into detail, but I want to make sure that you've read the first two chapters, or chapters 2 and 3 of the assertiveness workbook, because it gives you a good overview of the different styles. And I want you to start thinking about which style do you see yourself using the most often. And we'll talk about then how can we develop some skills and strategies to become more assertive. So thanks a lot and have a great week.